Hi, I am Simon of Moonstar Board Games. I love board games, and what I like to do in this series is to discuss a board game which I really, really love, which has given me a lot of enjoyment in my life, and to discuss it and why it does that, and hopefully to encourage you that this is a game worth checking out. Today, we are looking at Circle the Wagons. Circle the Wagons is a micro card game published by Button Shy Games, designed by Steve Aramini, Danny Devine, and Paul Kluka. It's a micro game, however, there are expansions. I have a solo player expansion, but I've never played it, to be quite honest, because this game is one of my favorite games to play with someone who's very new to board games or doesn't like very heavy games. In very casual environments. I've played this game in bars. I've played this game in airports. I've played this with a wide variety of people as well, and it has always gone down very well. So I'm not going to discuss exactly how the whole game is played, but to give a high-level overview, what you are doing is you are selecting cards like this, which have a grid of four rectangles with a picture in each and a color in each. You will be selecting them, placing them on top of other cards that you have taken in order to try and find combinations of pictures or colors, making color bricks, etc., by continually adding on the cards in front of you. So here, wow, that's actually not too bad. A lot of pickaxes. So if I have a victory condition, which we'll talk about in a second, this would be a nice play, as well as having the two fortifications next to each other. The victory conditions are selected at random. Every single one of these cards has a different victory condition on the back, be it to have the most yellow, or to have the most cows, or to not have guns next to cows, or guns next to booze for obvious reasons. And you will, once you select those three cards at random to be your victory condition cards, you will then place the rest of the cards in a big circle around those three cards, hence Circle the Wagon. Players will select those cards. They can choose, they have to go linearly. They have to go in a linear fashion, meaning they can't just pick whichever one they want. They have to go around the circle. They can choose to skip over cards, but those cards that are skipped are immediately passed to your opponent. And so, yeah, you might want that card that's later on that might really help you in where your particular game state is, but you'll be giving those cards to the cards that you skipped over to your opponent for free, potentially helping them to develop their own little village, little wagon train, little spot in the west. I don't know. It's not super thematic. There are some, like I say, there are some really nice victory conditions whereby if you have certain things next to each other, it makes sense. You shouldn't; those shouldn't be together. Like bootleggers, you get 2 points if you have. You get 2 points if you have booze next to a cart, but if you only have the booze and no cart next to it, then you lose points, because the aim of this particular victory condition is to distribute and transport booze. So it's not super thematic, and honestly, it could be anything other than the Western world. But there are those little moments. But by taking cards later around the circle, you'll be providing your opponent with the opportunity to have more cards, because once you've taken your card, they take the cards that you have passed over, and then it's subsequently their turn. So there's kind of a push and pull-ish mechanic in that, like I say, you want to get the cards that you need, and as you get to the later stages of the game, there might be one card that will really unlock a lot of your grid for points, but you'll be giving up cards to your opponent, and they might be the cards that person really needs. Now, you're both playing with the same free victory conditions, so there is a focus into certain cards, and certain cards will be better than others depending on those victory conditions. And both players or multiple players, you can play this. I wouldn't play this more than 2 players, but you could play it with 3 players pretty fairly. But so there are cards that will be inherently more valuable to all of the players as a result of the victory conditions, honing you in. For instance, in this example, honing you in on booze and on carts. But you are still left up to your own devices, and there are other ways to score points, such as having large areas of color, right? So there are general rules, like if you have a large enough area of color, those will score points. And so, whilst the victory conditions are important, they're not essential. So why do I love this game? It plays with everyone, dude. Like, it really does. As I said, I've played this in bars. I've played this in airports, and I've played it again with people who don't play games, and people who do play games. And it's interactive, especially if you play it with just two players, because you can see what the other person is doing, and it's kind of, I didn't want you to take that kind of experience, but it is strategic, right? It is strategic. You can look at what your opponent is doing, what goals they're trying to achieve, and you can decide to maybe take a card that you think they might really need, or to just ignore them entirely and say, hey, I'm gonna outplay you, right? I'm gonna pick better cards than you are picking for your particular strategy, depending on the victory conditions that are here. Small town charm. I really like this. I really like it. Both players count every territory square in their town. If you have fewer than your opponent, gain points equal to the difference. So that's a great example of a card where one player might say, "Hey, I want to score the other objective. I want to score these other objectives more. I know I'm going to need to take a lot of cards in order to score those other objectives. I'm not too concerned that if my town is bigger than yours, that you will get points, because I think I can just play better, and I'll get more points from my layout than you will from having a smaller town than me." But you can also force your opponent, right? You can force your opponent, because again, with this card, you get points for having a smaller town, meaning fewer cards that are layered over each other than your other player. But if you take a card that's later on down the line, the other player has to take all of those cards. So just that's one little victory condition that completely changes the dynamic of how the game is played and the considerations that the players need to take into account when picking cards. I love this game. I will say that the game won't play on an airline table. Not how it's meant to be, not how it's intended to be laid out. It's intended to be laid out with all the cards in a big circle, and you go around the circle selecting cards. You can maybe shrink that down by having it in lines, right? And so you're going down like a snake rather than in a big circle. But I still think you're probably a little bit too big for an airline table. But for a game this big that has so many different ways to play, you can play it with more than two players. Although I personally, I mean, if you're drinking, three players is probably a good time. Like a bar, if you're drinking, it's probably a good time. It's a perfect date game, by the way, too. Like taking this to a date. It's a really, really, really nice little game because it's not scary. The rules are very simple. It will reward a player who's better at the game than another, and I think you probably could get really good at this game. So maybe not perfect for a date, but very unassuming, very, very easygoing and friendly in how it presents itself and how it plays. Very easy rule teach, very small, very cheap. Button Shy I have like 15, I think, Button Shy games now, and this is one of my favorites, alongside Tussie Mussy and Strawpolis, and I think I have a Gropopolis as well. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, Circle the Wagons, brilliant game, perfect for casual environments. Not a heavy game at all, but plays really quickly. It's very simple to learn, very fun and dynamic in how it plays. It'll never play the same. Great game. I love Circle the Wagons.